Well, the federal government's move to compel Australians to get rid of gas stoves and switch to electrical appliances has divided opinion in the hospitality industry. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has agreed to a deal with the Greens to force households and businesses to stop using gas stoves and buy cleaner and cheaper appliances. Joining me now live is Suresh Manickam, the CEO of the Restaurant and Catering Industry Association. Suresh, thank you for joining us. Did this announcement take you by surprise?
Look, it has taken us by surprise a bit, but I think in the context of the recent noises by local government, I suppose it should have been expected.
Well, that's it. Of course, we've heard from the City of Sydney in particular in the last week. There's been similar moves in other areas of Sydney like Parramatta, Waverley, and I know that it's the same in Victoria and the ACT. What's been the feedback from industry so far?
Yeah, so there have been a number of things, but they focus on really a couple of issues. The first thing is that there has not been at all a consultation with the sector in relation to this. You'll appreciate that it takes a lot of time and also a lot of money to change over. So that's point number one. Point number two is if the government is seeking for the industry to change over, as I said, it costs money, and there need to be discussions about packages to subsidise, to educate and to inform the sector in terms of what is required.
And just on those costs, I mean, how much are we talking to switch from a gas stove to electric?
Well, it depends really in terms of how big the business is. But when you have a look at some of these commercial cookeries and commercial kitchens, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. I think it also needs to be understood that there are a lot of cooking styles that at the moment necessarily require gas. So one of them is flash frying in terms of woks, tandoors in terms of Indian food, grilling in terms of steaks and the like. So the idea that you could then switch over immediately, I think is ill thought out.
Speaking to some chefs, they've said that typically an electric stovetop actually takes longer for the food to cook. Are you worried that that's actually going to have an impact on the food itself?
Yes, absolutely. And not only will it take longer to cook, but as I've just articulated, there are a number of different cooking styles associated with gas. So it may well be the case that you also lose the authentic flavours of those types of cooking styles.
What would help here? Could the government somehow incentivise restaurants? What do you think is the solution?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. I think that there needs to be obviously, as I said, meaningful engagement. That's point number one. But it will cost a considerable amount of money, particularly if we're talking about induction cooking. So bear in mind, induction cooking is only certain metals that can be used on desktops. So that means you have to get rid of all your ceramics, all your glass, all your crockery, because that just simply won't be able to be used. So that's point number one. Point number two is we need to obviously think about what that will cost, not only just for the cookware, but wiring a building up. So it may well be the case that many restaurants are only on single phase. Typically, you'd need three-phase power make a commercial cookery of this size. So that's the second point. Third point is there needs to be substantial education provided. It is not as simple as turning around and saying, right, fine, just because you can cook on gas means you can cook with electricity. The two are not the same.
And do you think then some of these costs could be passed on then to consumers, to customers?
Well, sadly, I think that's right. So sadly, I think that, if this is going to be forced upon the industry, then the only way to, recoup these costs is to obviously pass it on to the dining public. And at the moment, it is the case that the industry is facing extraordinary costs in terms of energy in the first place. We're all having a cost of living squeeze. The cooking and hospitality industry is no different. And so I think it is only logical then that these costs will be passed on. Bear in mind that when these costs are passed on, this is not profit gouging, it's simply recouping costs.
I guess federal, state and local governments have all committed in some way to net zero, to, try and make more greener changes. Was this always going to be inevitable, do you think, Suresh?
Well, I'm not sure that it was always going to be inevitable, but I certainly am disappointed that we haven't had the discussion or the engagement. And just for clarity, we're certainly not saying that we are opposed to transitioning. That's not what we're saying at all. We are saying that we need proper engagement on this. And if that's the case, if we're going down this pathway, then we also need time to tool up and provide services accordingly.
How long do you think that transition will take to be able to switch from gas to electric?
Yeah, good question. Look, it will take a while. I would have thought at least a year plus. And the reason is because you have to get rid of all of the old stoves. There will be a need for new cookware. There will also be potentially a need for wire building, as I mentioned before, from single phase. And then on top of that, there'll be training requirements for the staff. So I would have thought you're looking at least a year.
Yeah, it's quite the transition. Suresh Manickam, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.